everyone. Today I will be talking about cross-age collaborations, and I guess it wouldn't make much sense if I don't have someone who's cross-age with me on stage. So in a moment here, I would like you to very warmly welcome someone very special, someone who I've spent the last year and a half working, learning, and growing with. Please, a huge round of applause for Liam.
Like Georgi said, I'm Liam, and I love working on long-term projects that I get to design myself. Sometimes it's hard to find classmates who are interested in the same thing that I am. For example, I'm really curious about how e to the power of x equals the cosine of x plus I times the sine of x. I mean, that's fascinating stuff. Just kidding. I really want to learn about things like paradoxes and brain twisters and all sorts of logic puzzles that leave me thinking but hurt other people's heads, like my mom's. Being able to do these things with Georgi, who can teach me some of the more complicated stuff, has been very interesting and fun, and definitely a lot better than class. I mean, who would choose adding fractions over crazy word problems that barely make any sense?
Now, working with Liam has been truly an extraordinary opportunity since I've learned so much that I don't really even know where to begin with. And I'm guessing some of you might be a bit skeptical. You might be thinking, okay, wait a minute, all you've done is teach a fifth grader a bunch of math and stuff, right? Well, I also taught him how to browse naughty stuff on the internet without his parents finding out, so that as well. But, joke aside, teaching is learning twice over. Joseph Joubert said that. And this quote has gained a very different meaning for me after I've worked with Liam. Now, there's the literal meaning that a teacher has to know the material he teaches twice over. Once for his own sake and understanding, and a second time over so he can effectively communicate. But the meaning I derive from this quote after working with Liam is that teaching is learning to know yourself and learning to know your student. Yes, that is my name on the screen and my title. And what I mean by this is that I believe effective education and mentorship are almost exclusively based on empathy and understanding. Meaning that we all see the world differently. We all have our different versions of reality. And teaching is essentially making someone else see what we see. And in order to do that, we must first see what he sees. And, I mean, me and Liam would solve word problems, and sometimes, sorry. Okay. I see mentoring as an ultimate tool for self-development, because when you try to actually walk in someone else's shoes, when you try to empathize this way, you can discover, you get a glimpse of your own character from a different perspective. You might discover something very unexpected for yourself. For example, like me, that you're very impatient. Me and Liam would solve word problems, and whenever I would find a riddle or a problem that would take me more than 5 minutes to understand, I would just say, let's move on. And my reasoning behind that was, okay, I'm a higher level math student. If it takes me this long to understand a problem, it would take even longer to explain it to Liam. Therefore, we would be losing a lot of time during which we could learn more stuff. And of course, this is actually quite arrogant if you think about it. And whenever I would do that, I would kind of feel disconnected from Liam because he would still think about the previous problem and struggle with it while I would try to move on to the next one. And I was only able to make the judgment that I'm too impatient and too rushing because next to me was him. And what I'm getting at is that when you try to teach or show someone something, you can discover some personal flaws that you didn't expect. And as such, I see mentoring or teaching someone else as an amazing tool for self-development. And I believe that if we all sat down and tried to explain some brain twisters to a fifth grader, we could all be a bit better and make the world a better place.
It's interesting you say that, Georgi, because I thought I was learning from you not to give up. I guess we were learning from each other. Okay, this kind of makes my head. Who was teaching who and who was learning from who? Well, who cares? That's a lot of who's. Did anyone sneak an owl in here? Anyway, it's pretty cool if that can happen.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And now I have a brother who's 12 years old, which would make him a bit older than Liam. And I have to admit that I've never been too good at communicating with him, as most instances of us communicating would end up like this for him and like this for me. And I mean, I think it's fair to say that almost everyone in this room can probably agree that this isn't particularly fair or nice. And when I found out that I was going to work with him, this was in fact one of my biggest worries. And I don't mean this situation in particular, but rather the issue it embodies, which is that it's very difficult to find an effective means of communicating when there is an age gap so wide. I remember, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the first time we met, it was very awkward. I remember being worried about how I should address him. Do I treat him like a baby? Do I treat him like a peer? All these different questions were racing through my mind.
The first few meetings were kind of awkward for me too. I mean, meeting with someone who's almost twice your age teaching you complicated math that barely makes sense. I enjoyed getting out of class, but I didn't really know George yet. I'm not sure that either of us really knew what to do. The first few times we just played with Legos and talked only a tiny bit. But in that time, I remember thinking, okay, it's kind of cool that I can still play with Legos when I'm 17. And if you're thinking about having an opportunity like this, you have to remember that it takes time.
It indeed does take time, because even to this day, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell if something that's interesting for me is interesting for Liam as well. For example, in a relatively recent meeting we had, we were looking at some TED Talks, and I found this TED Talk about the economic recession of 2008. And since it's a subject I'm interested in, I just jumped on it without a second thought. But halfway through the talk, I noticed Liam was having trouble staying awake. And then I thought that, okay, maybe socioeconomic interactions are not as interesting to a fifth grader as I might have thought.
Yeah, George, what were you thinking? What George doesn't know is, one, I love watching TED Talks, and two, even when I watch one that I don't fully understand, I'm able to walk away thinking about it. I ask a lot of questions at home. Also, a lot of the time, I'm left wondering how I could help or how I could do whatever the talk was saying.
Indeed, and there is no universal answer to the age-old question of effective communication. Sometimes figuring out what's interesting for someone else is a trial and error process, and as such, it's an extremely rewarding one, because you learn how to communicate, you learn how to express, you learn how to deal with an awkward situation and not be awkward around other people. You learn to, most importantly, listen and understand the other person. You learn empathy.
Yeah, so I don't really understand George's social life. I am only 10. I did find that I could emphasize his school workload and common interests like math and riddles. I learned that I have a lot more in common with older people than I thought, which makes you think that maybe we all have a lot more in common than we notice.
And you might be wondering why all this is important, and here is why I believe it's important. In this day and age, although we have so many more means and channels of communication, we have Messenger, we have Snapchat, we have Facebook, I believe we've actually lost part of our ability to properly express our feelings and ourselves. Nowadays, no one walks up to a girl and asks her out. It's all done through Messenger. We don't go to someone we love and look them in the eye and say, I love you, and feel the awesome wave of adrenaline wash over us. We send heart emojis, which, I don't know, the bigger they are, the more love, I suppose. But yeah, and really, I think this tutoring a fifth grader like this, trying to show someone who's much younger than you something new, is actually the first step towards regaining this lost paradise. And on this note, I think it's actually worth saying how much Liam has schooled me and surprised me. I hope every one of you has read The Little Prince, and if not, I guess you should be wondering what you're doing with your life.
I just read that book. I got it for my birthday, but I was already preoccupied with school and all that stuff, so I didn't read it right away. Although this book was hard to comprehend, it was very deep and philosophical. I think the meaning was that we all imagine and use our imaginations, but adults simply suppress it.
That is indeed true, and if you remember, one of the most iconic moments in The Little Prince was when the narrator was talking about how his picture of a boa constrictor that has devoured an elephant was interpreted as a cat by all the grown-ups. This is, of course, the image I'm referring to. And I just want to take the time to say that Liam has taught me to see the boa constrictor and the elephant many times over, opposed to seeing the cat. It's really amazing how much perspective we lose when we grow up under the pretext that the views we hold are childish or naive. And that's why I think really one of the best things for someone my age or even older is to just sit down and immerse himself in one of Liam's drawings or even a children's book, because when you do that, just for a brief moment, you start thinking like you're that age again. And when you think like you're that age again, you believe in yourself. You believe you can be a Jedi when you grow up. You believe that kindness leads to happy endings every single time. And I think this is very important because, as Steve Jobs rightfully said, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do.
Hey George, are you telling me I can't be a Jedi when I grow up? Anyway, even though scheduling this was sometimes hard and sometimes George just had to join me in class, I I think it paid off, and I think it's something other schools should try because it's worth it. And in international schools, you already have all these age groups working in the same space, so why don't you make this part of their daily routine?
Absolutely, and I would like to take this opportunity to make a call to action to our school and all the schools that will ever see this. Planned cross-age collaborations are a form of education like no other. I believe there is a lot of value to them, and like most other things in life, while they shouldn't be forced upon people, they should definitely be encouraged and supported. I hope what me and Liam have done starts a long-lasting tradition here at AAS of older students voluntarily mentoring younger students. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's give our TED Ed Club members one final round of applause. And if you enjoyed these talks, don't forget that you have the opportunity to listen to all 14 talks on Sunday, April 2nd, in the Red Cafe during our first annual TEDx Youth at AS Sofia event. More information to come. Thank you. Thank you. Grade 6, what do you guys have? Oh, so you're spreading out.